I didn't cry when I found the letters. I thought I would, but I didn't. I just sat there on the floor of my mother's closet, holding 40 years of a man's love that was meant for me, but never reached me. I used to believe he forgot me, that he moved on, that what we had was only young, foolish love. But I was wrong. He had written to me again and again and again. While I waited for words that never came, he was waiting for replies I never knew to send. There are heartbreaks that thunder, and there are heartbreaks that whisper and live quietly inside a life you build over them. This is the story of the love I lost, the love I found too late, and the peace I made with both. I was 17 when I met him, old enough to feel everything, young enough to believe everything would last. I was 17. The kind of 17 that believes time is generous, that tomorrow will always wait for you, that love, once found, never leaves. He was 18. He worked part-time at Mr. Daly's hardware shop after school, stacking paint cans and helping old men pick the right screws for things they probably weren't gonna fix. He had hands that always smelled faintly of wood and metal. Not perfume, not cologne, just honest work. We met in the quiet corners of town, the places no one pays attention to, but somehow become the backdrop to your life. The first real conversation we had was at the library. The sun was setting through the window beside him, turning the dust in the air into tiny, floating stars. He said quietly, "I like how you read. You don't rush the endings." I laughed because no one had ever noticed that about me. Nobody ever noticed the soft things. I started leaving the house earlier in the mornings, just so I might accidentally run into him on his way to work. And sometimes he did the same for me. We didn't call it love. We didn't have to. Our silence said enough. He would walk me home in the evenings. Not every day. Just the days when the sky turned purple and the wind felt like it was carrying something important. Our street was lined with maple trees then, the kind that dropped leaves like confetti in autumn. We'd walk slowly, trying to stretch every step, as if the road itself would shorten if we walked too fast. There was a bench near my gate, old, peeling, always leaning a little to the right. We sat there once when the night felt heavy with stars. He didn't look at me. He just spoke into the dusk. He said, "Sometimes I wish the world was small enough that no one could pull us apart." I didn't answer him. I didn't need to. I just placed my hand on top of his, quiet, steady, certain. And in that moment, love wasn't something we fell into. It was something we recognized, something that felt like it had been waiting for us long before we ever knew each other. We started writing letters then, not because we needed to, but because love feels bigger when you can hold it in your hands. He wrote about the sound of morning birds outside his window, about how he wished I could hear them too, about the way the bakery smelled when I helped Aunt May frost the cinnamon rolls, about the future, not in grand dreams, but in small ones. A house with 2 chairs by the window, a garden you talk to, and a porch light I come home to. It was simple, beautifully simple. I didn't know then how fragile simple things can be, how easily a gentle world can be interrupted. But life was already weaving the threads that would pull us apart. We just couldn't see them yet.
Love is a gentle thing, but the world around it is not always kind. My mother believed in caution. She believed in strength and appearances and doing what is proper. Maybe it was the world she was raised in. Maybe it was the world she had survived. But love does not measure itself by rules or expectations. She began to notice the letters, not the words, just the presence of them, the way I tucked them into my coat pocket, the way my cheeks warmed when I unfolded them, the way my handwriting changed in my replies, softer, rounder, certain. One evening, she watched me tie a ribbon around his latest letter. Just watched, quietly, with a stillness that did not belong to curiosity, but to calculation. My father said nothing. He used silence the way others use walls. At the dinner table that night, my mother asked me, without lifting her spoon, "Is it serious?" I didn't answer right away, because some loves are too new and too sacred to be spoken aloud. But silence can be its own confession. She set her spoon down. "You're young," she said. "There are things you do not understand yet. The world is not soft for girls who choose with their hearts." I knew what she meant. He didn't come from money. His family was ordinary, kind, hard-working, but not impressive on paper. My mother feared a life that was small, predictable, limited. She had clawed her way out of one, and she refused to see me return to it. But love does not care for ladders or titles. It grows where it is watered, and I was already watering it. So I kept writing back. Not defiantly, just sincerely. She didn't forbid me. Not at first. No. She did something much quieter, much more subtle. She began to intercept. A letter that didn't arrive on time, a message that felt delayed, days when he asked, "Did you get what I wrote?" And I said, "No, not this week." Confusion formed between us, like a fog neither of us knew how to explain. He tried to laugh it off at first. He said, "I must have mailed it late." But there was something in his eyes, a flicker of hurt he tried to hide. And there was something inside me, a small, tightening ache, the first quiet whisper of fear. Still, we loved. Still, we walked. Still, we believed in each other. But love changes when doubt slips into the spaces between words. Not loudly, not suddenly, just a gentle drift, like a boat pulled slowly away from shore by a current you cannot see. I did not know then that the letters he wrote were not missing. They were being taken, one by one, folded shut, hidden, silenced, not by fate, not by distance, but by the hands of someone I trusted, someone who believed she was protecting me. She did not know she was taking something I would never learn how to replace.
There is a kind of silence that does not arrive all at once. It begins softly, like dust settling in a room you haven't opened in a while. We were still writing, still meeting, still loving, but something had changed. He would ask, "Did you read what I wrote about the lake?" And I would shake my head, confused. What lake? And then I would see it, a small flicker in his eyes. Not anger, not disappointment, just sadness. A sadness that wondered if I simply didn't care enough to notice. I tried to explain, I haven't received anything. And he tried to believe me. We both tried. But love, even the gentlest kind, can bruise when it is misunderstood. One evening, we sat on that old bench by my gate. The maple leaves were beginning to change. Soft reds, tender golds, the kind of beauty that always feels like a warning that something is ending. He held my hand, but his fingers were not as relaxed as they once were. "Tell me the truth," he said. "Is your heart changing?" My breath trembled, not because my love was fading, but because the question itself hurt more than anything I had ever known. "No," I whispered, "my heart has not changed, not even a little." He nodded, but doubt is a seed. Once planted, it grows in the quiet. I could feel it inside him, inside me, and neither of us knew how to stop it. Days passed, then weeks. Sometimes I would wait by the window for the mailman to arrive. I would watch him walk to our mailbox, lift the lid, close it, and leave. And I would feel something inside me sink. Not just disappointment, something heavier, something like loss. I asked my mother once, casually, trying not to seem desperate, "Did anything come from me today?" She didn't look up from her sewing. She said no, too quickly, too simply, and the thread in her hand tightened. There are moments in life when your heart understands something long before your mind is willing to accept it. I felt a distance growing, not between him and me, but between the girl I was and the woman the world was shaping me into. He would still walk me home, but our steps were slower now, our conversations shorter, the silences longer. Yet there was still love. That's the hardest part to explain. Love can survive in silence. Love can endure confusion. Love can wait. But love cannot speak if its voice is taken from it. One evening, As the sun melted into the horizon, he stopped at the gate and didn't sit on the bench. He just looked at me, eyes soft, tired, longing for something neither of us could name. He said, "I feel like I'm losing you." And I felt like I was losing him too. Not because we wanted to, not because we chose to, but because something unseen was pulling us apart. Something we didn't know how to fight. Something we couldn't even see. The silence had rooted itself. And once silence roots itself between two hearts, it becomes harder and harder to find the way back.
The day I realized something was wrong, I remember it clearly, the kind of memory that does not fade, even as decades wash over it. He had written me a letter. He mentioned it when we walked home. "It's one of my better ones," he said, softly proud, in that gentle way he always was. "Tell me what you think of the last paragraph." His eyes were warm, hopeful. I smiled and promised I would, and I meant it. The next morning, I waited. The mailman came. He opened the box, closed it, left. Nothing. Maybe tomorrow, I thought. But tomorrow came, and the next day, and the next, still nothing. When we met again, I tried to hide the worry in my voice. "I never got your letter." He looked surprised at first, but then something darker flickered through him. He reached into his coat pocket, slowly, and pulled out a folded envelope. My handwriting, my name, the letter he had written to me, unopened. He had mailed it. He had sent it, but it had found its way back to him, unopened, unread, unwelcome. He didn't say it out loud. He didn't have to. We both knew someone had sent it back. Someone who should have protected me. Someone who thought love was something to be controlled. My mother. She had drawn her line, not with shouting, not with force, just with the quiet, efficient cruelty of preventing a heart from speaking. He looked at me the way a person looks at something already slipping away. He said, "I don't want to be a burden to your family." I answered, too quickly, too desperately, "You're not." He gave a small, sad smile, the kind of smile that knows things before words catch up. He said, "Maybe not to you, but to them, I already am. I should have fought harder. I should have run to him. I should have said, 'My love is mine to choose.' But I was 17, and 17 is brave in dreams, but frightened in real life." Days passed. Letters slowed. Walks shortened. Silences grew. Not angry silences. Not cold silences. Silences that were heavy with things we didn't know how to say. He still loved me. I still loved him. But love without a voice, begins to starve. Until one afternoon, he did not walk me home. I waited at the gate until the stars came, until the street was empty, until the night felt like a closed door. That night, I pressed my forehead to the glass of my bedroom window and whispered his name to a sky that could not answer. Some part of me still believed he would come tomorrow. When you are young, you believe love can survive anything. What I did not know then was that it could not survive what it never had the chance to speak.
Time does not ask you if you are ready. It does not wait for your heart to heal before it begins again. Days became weeks, weeks became months, and life, as it always does, kept moving. I finished school. I helped Aunt May at the bakery. I learned to make the perfect braid of dough for the loaves that always sold first. People would smile and say things like, "You've grown up so much. You look well. You must be excited for the future." I learned how to nod and how to smile, even when my heart felt like something I'd folded away and tucked into a drawer I no longer opened. He was still in town. I saw him sometimes, carrying lumber, fixing a fence, laughing with friends in the late afternoon light. He always looked the same, still gentle, still steady, but there was a quiet in him now, a quiet that matched mine. We would look at each other, not long, just a moment where the whole world seemed to hold its breath, a moment that said, "We remember. We still feel it, but we don't know how to reach across the distance anymore." Then life opened new doors, because that is what life does when you are young. I met a man, not like him, not soft, not reflective, but kind enough, stable, reliable, a man who could build a future my mother would approve of. Everyone said it was a good match, a sensible match, a right match. And maybe, in many ways, it was. On the night before my wedding, I sat by my window. The same window where I once whispered his name into the night, and I let myself say it one last time. Just once. Softly. Not as a call, not as a plea, just as a memory. I wondered if he was awake too, if he felt something shift in the air, if he knew I had never stopped loving him. I had only stopped fighting.
Marriage is not always a love story. Sometimes it is a partnership, a shared roof, a quiet routine, and there can be peace in that. I lived a good life, a gentle life. My husband was decent. My children grew strong. We had dinners by the fireplace, birthdays with laughter, holidays and pressing oranges from marmalade in the kitchen. There was love there. Not the first kind, not the tender, glowing kind that begins at 17, but a quieter love, like a warm coat against winter. But every now and then, when the world was quiet, when the children were asleep, when the house settled into silence, my mind would wander to a boy who once walked me home beneath the maple trees, to letters written in handwriting I once knew by heart,
to a future that never had the chance to become real. Not regret, not longing, just a soft ache, the kind you learn to live beside without letting it take you away from the life you have. Time did not erase him, it simply placed him gently in the corner of my heart, where memory and love can live side by side, hidden, quiet, unspoiled. For years, I believed the story had ended there. I had no idea that time, after all its silence, was not finished with us yet. My mother lived a long life, strong, disciplined, certain in her beliefs. Even when her hair turned silver, even when her hands grew unsteady, she held herself with the same firmness she had carried all my childhood. I loved her, even when I did not understand her, even when the choices she made left tender marks on the softest parts of me. When she passed, the house became so quiet, it felt like even the walls were exhaling. My daughter came to help me sort through her belongings. We moved slowly, drawer by drawer, cabinet by cabinet, memory by memory. Clothes folded carefully, scarves still smelling faintly of lavender, photographs labeled in her perfect handwriting. My daughter, with her sweet heart, said, "We can stop for today, Mama. This is enough." And maybe it was. But something I still cannot explain, guided my steps toward the hallway closet, the one my mother always kept locked, the one she used to say held things that had no place anywhere else. The key was on her bedside table, small, worn, like it had been used many times. My hand trembled as I held it. Not from fear, from recognition. The lock opened with a sound I felt in my bones. Inside the closet were folded blankets, neatly stacked, as if waiting for a winter that never came. And behind them, hidden in the very back, where light could never reach, a wooden box. Not ornate, not heavy, just familiar. My breath caught in my throat. I knew that box, not because I had ever seen it, but because some part of my heart had been searching for it my entire life. My daughter called my name once, twice. I didn't answer. I sat down on the floor, right there in that hallway, the air still and unmoving around me. I untied the ribbon. It was faded now. Once red, now brown, softened by years of being held, opened, reopened, closed again. And inside, letters, dozens of them, all addressed to me.
My name written in his handwriting, a handwriting I had not seen in over 40 years. My breath left me, not like a gasp, more like something being released that had been held too tightly for too long. The first letter was dated 3 weeks after the last one I remembered receiving. The next, a month later, then another, and another, and another. He had written through every silence, every confusion, every unanswered question. He had not left me. He had been reaching for me while I stood believing he had let go. My mother had opened each letter, not to read them, but to decide they should not reach me. She thought she was protecting me from a future she was afraid I would choose, from a life she did not believe was enough. She never understood she was taking something that had already chosen me. I did not cry. Grief has many shapes. Some grief is water. It breaks you open, spills out of you. But this grief was earth. Heavy, still, ancient. The kind that settles into your bones and speaks in silence. I held those letters like they were living things. And in that moment, sitting on a cold hallway floor, with the past finally laid bare in my hands, I understood something that took me most of my life to learn. A heart does not break because love ends. A heart breaks because love continues without a place to go. I closed the box very gently. I pressed it to my chest, and I whispered his name, not as a question, not as a memory, as a prayer.
I did not open all the letters at once. My heart would not have survived it. I opened just one, then closed the box and pressed it against my chest like something warm that could still burn me. That night, I didn't sleep. Memory does not ask permission to return. It floods. His smile, his hands, the way he said my name, as if he were choosing it carefully every time. The next morning, I stood in front of the mirror. The woman looking back at me was not 17 anymore. Her hair was silver, her hands softer, her eyes deeper, wiser, but still carrying that same quiet ache. I did not feel foolish. I did not feel old. I felt unfinished. There are moments in life when you realize some stories are not over. They are simply waiting. I found the courage to do something I had not done in decades. I went looking for him. I asked the town clerk, the postman, the old baker whose memory was better than her eyesight. "Do you remember him?" I asked. They all remembered. Everyone remembers a gentle soul. Gentleness leaves fingerprints that never fade.
Someone told me he still lived nearby, not far, just a few miles from town. Widowed, years ago, no children, a small house near the edge of the woods where the river bends. My heart tightened, not with fear, but with something that felt like coming home to a room I once lived in. I drove there in the late afternoon, when the sun turns the world gold, as if trying to soften whatever comes next. The road was quiet, the sky wide, the air still. When I reached his house, I sat in the car for a moment, hands on the steering wheel, breathing. There are moments that do not belong to time, moments that belong only to the heart. I walked to his porch. The wood creaked softly under my feet, a sound I found comforting somehow. I knocked once, not loudly, just enough. And then the door opened. He stood there, older, yes, hair white now, shoulders a little stooped, but the eyes were the same warmth, the same quiet, the same depth that once made the world gentler just by existing in it. He looked at me as if the world had paused, as if 40 years collapsed into a single heartbeat. He whispered my name, not a question, not a memory, a recognition. And in that moment, every letter I never read, every walk we never took, every future we never lived, came back to us, like breath returning to lungs that had learned to live without air. He didn't ask me why I was there. He didn't need to. He simply stepped aside and said, "Come in."
His house was small, with sunlight falling across the floor in long, gentle stripes, the kind of sunlight that feels like a memory itself. He led me to the kitchen table, the same kind of table you'd find in every house of our generation, sturdy, wooden, holding 1,000 quiet mornings within it. We sat across from each other, not close, not far, just right. For a moment, we didn't speak. We didn't need to. Some silences are empty, but this silence was full of everything we had ever felt, everything we had ever wondered, everything time had not erased. Finally, he smiled, soft, familiar, like the first time I saw him in the library window. "You look the same," he said. I laughed quietly, gently. "No, I've changed." He shook his head. "No, you look like you. That's what I mean." There was no trembling in his voice, no bitterness, no accusation, just truth. I placed the wooden box on the table. He looked at it. His breath caught, not sharply, but the way a person inhales when something sacred is in front of them. "You found them," he said. I nodded. "I didn't know." I whispered. My mother, she kept them from me. He didn't move, didn't look away. He just closed his eyes for a moment. Not in pain, not in anger, in release, like something inside him had been carrying weight for too long. I hoped, he said, I hoped you'd find them someday. I just didn't know if someday would come. The afternoon light warmed the room as if to hold us gently while we spoke of old things. I waited, he said, not because I expected you to come back, but because loving you was not something I needed you to see for it to be real. My hand softened around my cup, tea growing cold, yet my chest warming in a way I had not felt in decades. I said, I thought you forgot me. He smiled, a sad smile, a tender smile. No, I just learned to love you from a distance. The room went still. Time, for a moment, felt small again, like it had once. We talked then, not about the years we lost, not about who was wrong or right, not about regrets. We talked about the bakery, the hardware shop, our parents, the gardens we grew, the winters we endured, the small joys that kept us living. We spoke like two people who had lived entire lives, but still remembered the sound of each other's laughter. At one point, he reached across the table and placed his hand over mine. Warm, steady, real, not claiming, not holding on, just being there. You were my first home, he said. My eyes softened. My voice was barely a breath. And you were my kindness. Outside, the wind rustled the trees. Leaves whispered against the window pane, like the world itself was listening. We did not cry. Tears were not needed. We had cried all our tears in all the silent years between us. This moment was not about grief. It was about understanding, about two hearts finally finding their way back to the same quiet place, not to start again, but to rest together for however long life would allow.
We sat for a long while after that, not talking, not needing to, just two lives settled into a peace we didn't know we had been waiting for. He made tea, the way he must have made it every morning, simple and careful. He placed the cup in front of me, as if it were something precious. And perhaps it was. We didn't speak of what if. We didn't try to rewrite the past. We didn't ask why things happened the way they did. Some questions have no answers,
and some answers do not heal. Instead, he asked me, "What made you look for me?" I looked at the box between us. "I didn't," I said. "Love did." He nodded as though he had always known that would be the truth. The sun had begun to lower in the sky when we stepped outside. We walked slowly down a path lined with tall grass that bowed gently in the breeze. We didn't hold hands. We didn't need to. Love does not always need to touch to be felt. The river shimmered below, catching the late golden light. He stopped near the edge, the same way he used to pause before saying something that mattered. "I used to imagine," he said softly, "that we grew old together. I know that sounds foolish now." "It doesn't," I replied. "It sounds like love." He closed his eyes, not in regret, in peace, in release. I could feel something happening, not ending, but settling, softly, kindly. He turned to look at me, and for a moment, we were 17 again. Not in our bodies, but in our eyes. And I realized something. Love does not disappear just because life takes a different shape. Love adapts. Love stays. Love remembers. We walked back to the house slowly. He stood at the door. I stood just outside it. No promises, no "we should have," no tears. Just this truth spoken gently. "We were real," I said. "Yes," he answered. "We always were." I leaned forward, and we touched foreheads. A gesture so simple, so tender. It felt like an entire lifetime folded into a breath. And then I left. Not because I wanted to, but because the story had finally found its place. Not in the past, not in the future, but in the heart. Held, remembered, complete. Life does not give us only one love. It gives us many kinds. The love we grow from, the love we learn from, the love we carry forward, and the love that lives quietly in the background, like a song we never stop hearing. I used to think love was something that had to be lived in order to be real, shared, built, shaped into a life together. But I know something different now. Some loves do not become homes. Some loves become rooms inside the heart, where we go to remember who we were when the world was young and everything felt possible. And that kind of love is not less. It is simply unfinished. But even unfinished things can be beautiful. There are people we meet who change the direction of our days, even if they do not stay in them.
There are moments we experience that settle in us so deeply they become part of our voice, our breath, our quiet. And there are loves we do not get to keep in our hands, but we carry in our chest for a lifetime. He was one of those loves for me. Not a regret, not a wound, not a question, just a truth that lived in me whether I spoke of it or not. I used to think closure meant endings, a clean door, a final page, a goodbye that left nothing behind. But closure is not forgetting. Closure is remembering without hurting. Closure is being able to look back and say, this mattered. This shaped me. This made me softer, wiser, deeper. This was real. And real things do not disappear. They simply take their place, somewhere quiet, somewhere gentle, somewhere inside us. So I live my life now knowing that love does not need to be lived in the world to be alive in the heart. It only needs to have been felt truly once.
I keep the box on my windowsill now, not to look at every day, just to know it's there. Some loves do not fade, they simply learn to rest. And when the light comes through the window just right, I see the ribbon shimmer, and I remember who I was, who he was, and the space between us that time could never erase. I do not wish for different years anymore. I lived the life I lived. I loved the way I knew how, and I made peace with what never had the chance to become. But sometimes, on quiet mornings, with tea warming my hands, I think of him, not with longing, but with gratitude. Because some people are gifts that arrive early in our life, so we have something soft to carry through all the years that follow.
If you have a love like that, one that never truly left you, I hope you hold it kindly, not as a wound, but as a light. Something that reminds you you have lived deeply, felt deeply, loved deeply. And that is never something to regret.